Hey, this is Ben from Black Talent Design. Today we've got honeybees, honeycombs and hexagons. This is my first hexagonal charcuterie board build and I had to do a bit of research because I probably haven't drawn a hexagon for 20 years. So you start off drawing a straight line, which is your first side, set your compass to the length and make an arc from each side to find the centre point of your hexagon and mark it. Make another arc from that centre point and cross it with an arc from the corner of your original side. This will give you corners 3 and 4. Then you're going to use corners 3 and 4 to make 2 more arcs, cross them over to find corners 5 and 6. Mark all your corners. Then it's simply a case of connecting all the corners with a straight edge to get a perfect hexagon. To help calculate the size of your hexagon, it's important to know that the longest part of the hexagon will be exactly twice the length of one of the sides. Right, time to cut it out. Don't worry, I've not lost the plot. I'm not trying to cut a straight edge with a jigsaw. I'm just rough cutting it and then taking it over to the miter saw. Now the piece of wood that I'm using here is actually an old oak dining table that a friend gave to me. The wood was warped and twisted, and so it wasn't really able to be used as a dining table. I thought about flattening it out and restoring it as a dining table, but in the end I decided it would be easier to cut it into sections and use it for multiple charcuterie boards. The nice thing about this piece is that the thickness allowed me to get quite creative and inlay some very interesting things into my charcuterie board builds, as you'll see in a few moments. So right now I'm just marking a straight edge. Once that straight edge is marked, that is going to be my channel. This part of the charcuterie board I'm going to use the router to make thinner so that I can then fill it with epoxy amongst other things. Now, as you'll see from this, I don't end up with a perfectly flat finish, and I could spend time flattening this out, but I'm actually going to fill the base with a thin layer of epoxy, so if it's slightly uneven it's not going to matter because I'm covering it up anyway. But what does matter is the small mistake I'm about to make here, where I take a notch out of my straight edge. So I've got to fix that. And I guess this is what I get for trying to freehand up to a straight line. It was never going to work. I'm just not that steady. So I've clamped down a straight edge and I'm just going to guide the router along the straight edge to get myself a nice clean cut. Realise I've just missed a little bit in that corner, so off we go, and there we have a nice straight edge. This next bit was challenging, trying to build a mould with corners that aren't 90 degrees. But working it out, it's a hexagon, therefore the corners are going to be 60 degrees, so I was able to use the miter saw to cut these to 60 degrees. Once I'd got my mould all cut up and clamped into place, it was time to pour a very thin base layer of jet black epoxy. Then right here we have another fantastic Temu find. This was a honeycomb and a honey drip silicone mould. And I thought adding these in on top of the jet black epoxy would provide a wonderful contrast and some lovely detail. As well as the resin honeycomb and honey drips, we have these solid brass honeybees, yet another cracking Temu find, which I'm going to encase in epoxy in the board. And then it was just a case of deciding on a layout. And once I was happy, it's time to mix up that crystal clear epoxy and get to pouring. One of the issues I had is as I hit this honeybee with the crystal clear epoxy, it just kept tipping over and it was very stubborn every time and I had to correct it. Otherwise, the back of the bee would be sticking up too high and would break the epoxy line, so I wouldn't get a flat finish. But eventually I got it to stand up properly and stop falling over. One of my favourite parts of the process is the first time you hit the epoxy with the heat gun or blowtorch and see those bubbles burst, and it reveals how clear it's going to be. This was another horrible mould release. I don't know what happened there, but the melamine just did not want to give up, so it was spent a lot of time getting the rest of this board away from the epoxy. Sometimes they pop right free, sometimes they are as stubborn as this one, and it is never fun having to break all that melamine off and then plane it and sand it off. But eventually it came free and it was on to the longest part of the process, which is the sanding. And to make the sanding slightly more interesting for me and also for the viewer, I bought a new piece of kit which was a DeWalt random orbital cordless sander, meaning I could do my sanding in more picturesque locations. Then onto another of my favourite parts, applying the first layer of finish, where we really see that wood grain pop and reveal. And here it is, the finished product. Guys, I feel like if you've made it this far, I deserve a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed this project, so much so that I'm hoping to do more of these encased builds soon.